Welcome to this Q&A for Beyond Moving. I'm your host, Danielle Capretti, and I'm delighted that we have some very special people from the film with us. Vikram Dasgupta, who's our director, and the star, Siphe November. Now, this Q&A will be about 20 minutes long, 10 of which I would love to be your questions. So if you have a question, please pop it in the Q&A box, not the chat box, but the Q&A box, and I will be very happy to relay it to our wonderful gentleman here. So Vikram, can you tell us the story of how you discovered this wonderful young dancer?
Sure. First of all, thank you. Thanks for being, thank you for giving us the privilege of being here and sharing our film with the audiences. Siphe, I met Siphe, I think, randomly by chance while filming a smaller project for the Canada National Ballet School. And my director of photography, who also shot a big part of this film, pointed out Siphe through the camera lens and called me over and said, look at this guy, the way he looks at us, it's almost like he's piercing through to our soul. And I'm like, holy shit, that's true. He is intense. And I think he was 14 or 15 or even younger back then. So I remember that. And then later on, when we were asked to do a bigger project amongst a few other little things that we were doing, Siphe was the first person that was in my mind. So we reached out to him as one of the stories we were going to pursue. That's how I met Siphe, I think, in a nutshell.
So Siphe, you really let Vikram into your life. Why this guy?
Good question. No, I mean, he's a good guy, and I think the way that the project started was so organic. It wasn't out of the blue. As Vic was saying, there were a bunch of other stories that were going to be told, and so the way that the process happened to the point where it eventually became a feature length, Vic's first, and obviously mine. I don't know. It was just such he didn't set out to do that, and I didn't set out to tell a whole story about my life and make it a bigger film and tell it in its totality. So it just kind of happened naturally. And so it was easy to kind of peel the layers off a little bit as we filmed, because it took a bunch of years to film as well. And so we got to know each other better. He got to know my family better. And so it was just a real organic process. And so in that space, I think by the end, you're like, oh shit, there it is. You know my whole entire life now, right?
Now, you've both said that the best part of the film was going back to South Africa. Why?
Siphe, you want to go first? Oh, okay. Well, for me, it was a decision that was kind of not just my own. It was kind of winning Siphe's trust to let us into his life and to the lives of where he's from, and to allow us to go there before him. Because when I heard that he was going to go back to Zulani for that Christmas, I wanted to go there before him to get the uncluttered picture of Zulani without Siphe, and meet his mom, meet his brothers, meet Fiona. And the trust that I think that is needed from someone of that age to let a camera crew go there about a documentary that he's a big part of. At that point in time, we were following 3 stories, not just Siphe. So he was one of the 1/3 of the film. Yeah, because that's how it started. It started as 5 little short films regarding different dancers from the school. And then as we started exploring Siphe's story, which kind of brings us back to the question you asked, South Africa was special because because Siphe's story kind of had so much more meat to it and so much more elements that we wanted to explore on that journey. And the other characters that we encountered when we went to South Africa, we met his mother, Mama Sylvia, we met Fiona. And these are, in and itself, there could be films made just about them, okay? So all of a sudden, it became so much more bigger. So we had to let the other stories go. We decided to focus on that. So South Africa was a big part of it. Plus it's South Africa, like it's a place which is so complex and multi-layered, and so like everyone has baggage, and yet it's so beautiful. And at the same time, if you focus on just the visceral nature of what you are witnessing, it takes you on its own ride, and we went for it. So I think that's what was so special about South Africa, and it kind of changed the perception of the film and our perception of Siphe also. So yeah, that's how I got Siphe.
At Siphe, you took your best mate Ryan with you, and I know that was a fantastic part of the South African experience.
Yeah, that trip was very special because, you know, Ryan is my closest friend in all of the world, and you know, and he had never obviously experienced or met such an integral part of my being in all our 10 years together. And so to me, it was very special to introduce him to the other half of my life per se, you know, because I spent half of my life there, half of my family's there. And so it was kind of giving him the full experience that, you know, I've experienced in his life with his family here in Canada. So it was a real kind of important trip for me, having him there, and it was super special. And you know, it was a memory that you know will last with me forever. And so it was important that I brought him there, and Vic just happened to be there, which was fine. And obviously for Vic now, because now we're friends outside of that experience, and for him to have been there to experience that as well was just very, very special.
Are you contemplating a trip to India someday?
I would love to go to India, Mister.
Yeah.
And I noticed you're both Canadian immigrants. Did that help you bond a little bit more?
I actually just became a Canadian citizen as of last week, Tuesday. I was just here as on a work permit and a student visa, but I'm now officially a Canadian citizen. So before then, no.
Fair enough. Now, Vikram, you had so much footage here. You had the archive footage. You had the footage that you shot of Siphe dancing. And then you had the footage of all these wonderful women in Siphe's life, Kelly, Fiona, Mama Sylvia. How did you sort that out to make such a lovely and coherent film?
First of all, thank you for calling it lovely and coherent. I certainly lost a bit of my coherence doing it because I edited it for a year and a half while I was filming it, and a lot of the incidents in the film was happening while I was editing. The third act was actually happening in front of me while I was filming, and we hadn't done filming yet. And so I think when I first met Siphe, he was 14. And Siphe wanted to tell a part of his story, a part of his life. Okay, and that story that he wanted to share with us, that story was the one that eventually I had to succumb to and I had to respect. So the film that I made after it was made was not made about the Siphe that's sitting here now, the 21-year-old first soloist of the National Ballet of Canada. It was actually for the 14-year-old kid who I met and the story he wanted to share with the world. So every time I found myself being lost in all these different stories of race and everything that comes to South Africa, I had to say, what was the story that initially that captivated me was Siphe, the young kid Siphe. And so that really kept us on track to the story that we were telling. That was the core, and we stuck to that, and not the more easier sold narrative that is could have been a more timely film, could have been a white savior film, could have been so many other films. It could have been any of those films, but we chose to tell the story, the one that Siphe wanted and trusted us with. So that's what kept us on track a little bit. If that answers the question, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it does. And somehow now I'm visioning in my mind, Siphe at 21, Siphe at 28, Siphe at 35, going back, the career of a dancer. Now, being a dancer, sir, you can do anything that you want with your body. It's obvious. Any direction in dance that you want to go into, you can. Why ballet?
I think it started off at first as kind of, for me personally, as a mission to go, because I came up with street dance in South Africa, the rhythm and the traditional African dance. I know that I have that. That's always going to be a part of me. And so it was about, as I was growing up in the school and learning more about ballet and ballet culture, um, kind of breaking boundaries. It was about going, why can't I do it? You know, why can't I be just as good at ballet? Join a ballet company, you know, and because I know I love to dance and I know that dance will always be a part of my life. So why not do it on one of the biggest stages that there are in the world? Why not work towards that? Um, and so it was really about kind of going in on that mission and being intentional about it. Obviously, I love it and I love it more now, but it was really about breaking boundaries and, you know, and it's such a beautiful art and it should be it should be inclusive. It should be for everybody. I should have never felt at a young age that like, can I do dance? Like, why can't I do dance? You know, so it was really about just hunker down and see how far you can take it. And also on the other hand, it's so hard to make a career out of dance, right? As a professional dancer. And so I think a part of me also knew that if I could join a ballet company, a big ballet company, there would be some security there. And, you know, it would allow for me to build a career, build a life, and support family and things like that back home without, I guess, because of the nature of how it works, that it would be a lot easier from that perspective, financially and career-wise, to be a ballet dancer. So that was another reason that I chose to focus in on ballet.
And on that note, we have a question from our audience for Siphe. This person says, thank you very much for sharing your story. It's inspirational. So you both have created inspiration. Siphe, what would be your message to any aspiring dancers?
My message to any aspiring dancers would be to stick with it, you know, especially that feeling when the whole world, when you're dancing and the whole world doesn't exist, it kind of like dims, you know, like when, in the same way that when you're at a party and you're dancing and you're having a good time, everything else slowly disappears, you know, and it's just you and those, and that feeling and that groove and that happiness and that solo time filled with enjoyment, right? And so I think for any aspiring dancers, like, go back to that moment whenever it's hard, because it's gonna be incredibly hard. It's not easy. It is not easy, but you will get back to that space. And so always work hard to get back to that space where you feel that feeling of just the whole world disappearing and you by yourself filled with joy. And that's the beauty of dance for the individual. So try to always find the why you got into it within yourself, that feeling that you had, and just work hard. Like, if you love it, don't let anything like, no matter what, whether you can't join the company you want to join, whether you can't do the style of dance that you really thought you were, you know, going to be the best at, none of that matters. Just, you know, it's gonna take its own path, but as long as you're trying to find that feeling every single time, that's gonna keep you going. You're gonna be successful, I believe. I don't know.
Very profound advice. And actually, on the difficulty note, I hear from my friends in the art scene in Toronto that nothing is happening at the moment. So how have you both been, what have you been doing to cope with the pandemic?
Okay. It's been difficult for sure. I recently did a short documentary about the migrant workers in Canada that were locked away by the Red Cross in order to not spread the virus, and then how the farms were being treated. So I was actually fortunately working, though the subject is not something that I can't say the word fortunate for it. It was an unfortunate story, but it was something that needed a bit of a platform to be told. So I was kind of busy till last Friday, this Friday, finishing that short documentary. I was very blessed with work. But me and Siphe, we've also been in our own social bubble, been meeting and figuring out how to do something to keep our creative juices going. So yeah, you have to keep on keeping on, so that's what we've been trying to do. Siphe, what about you?
It's been difficult, because I want to be in the studio, I want to work, and you want to be able to perform and put on these big productions, and also I just, part of it for me was my career was going up, everything was going well. And so to kind of have this pause just makes you question everything. But otherwise, we're allowed to be back in the studio in small groups, masks, and so there's some elements of normalcy there. Just being able to be in the space is actually a great relief, and so I'm doing okay. We're doing okay. At least we can work a little bit. It's not normal, but we still get to do what we do. Very grateful.
Yeah.
And as a final question, let's look to the future. Now, I know you both have some interesting projects in the mix and some interesting ambitions. So Vikram, what's on your plate?
Well, I'm doing this, I've been working on this other project about this beautiful, crazy woman in India who used to feed 600 dogs every day. And in the process, she made her husband and her son bankrupt at one point in time. And it's my own mother. And I basically have to, so that's kind of my next bane of existence for the next little while. I'm finishing it. The film is called Dogma. And then I'm doing another project with the widows in Vrindavan. It's a City of Widows project that I'm collaborating with a New Zealand company. But all of this is kind of on a standstill. Like, we are doing all the development, we are doing all the writing, we are doing all the research, but we can't really do anything because India is right now, I'm extremely worried about the people there, especially my parents and people of that generation, because it's just such a crazy place right now. So I really just want people to be safe first, and then everything else, and work and cinema and film and documentaries will happen. But you got to keep the fire going. But not, you have to also be careful as to the times that we are in. So just trying to be cautious and yet, keeping it alive.
For me, what's next? I mean, hopefully we can get back on stage, get back performing, get these productions on, and be creative again, and create new works. That's basically all I'm trying to focus on right now, is to a place where we can have productions put on stage. Everything else is really on standstill.
I read that your brother is with Ballet Black in London. Is he still working with them?
Yes, yeah, he is. He actually just won an Olivier Award for choreography last week. Yeah, so he's doing well. I would love to do a project with him. Would love to be able to put something on, but also hopefully for Zolani, one day to create some sort of platform and space. And so that's long-term stuff. That's not even in the future at all. So in the near future anyway. So it's those ideas are always floating, and kind of just trying to work on actualizing them. Yeah.
Well, I think for both of you, things are just going to get better and better. It was a pleasure to watch a very inspiring film, and thank you both for joining us here today. Now, wonderful audience, if you have enjoyed watching this film and this Q&A, please do consider donating to help Raindance return next year to show wonderful films like this one. Click the red donate button on the film's webpage to give £5, which is a steal for a film of this quality, or go to raindance.org/donate. Thank you so much, Siphe and Vikram, and I am watching your spaces in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.